Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth. I want to call the order our public work session today, Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. And Madam Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Vice Mayor Barnes. Mr. Battle.
Here.
Mrs. Lucasberg.
Here.
Mr. Moody.
Here.
Dr. Whitaker. Mr. Woodard.
Here.
Mayor Glover.
Here. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jones, are you ready to proceed with your items? Please proceed, ma'am.
Ms. Kelly Harris Braxton, Executive Director, and Mr. Jim Reginald, VFC's Fiscal Policy Analyst. Ms. Harris Braxton is presenting first and will provide an overview of Virginia First Cities Coalition. Our city has been a member since its inception in 1993. Currently, our very own Councilwoman Lisa Lucas-Burke serves as the Vice Chair of the VFC Board. Ms. Harris Braxton will share information regarding VFC's mission, membership, accomplishments, and highlight the value of our membership with VFC. Mr. Reginald will provide an informative presentation regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funds to include the funding allocated to VFC members as well as the ESSER2 K-12 funds provided to members. This will be the first of several presentations staff will bring to the council regarding these funds. The purpose of this first presentation is to provide you with a general overview of these acts and how the funds can be used. As part of his presentation, Mr. Reginald will also share information regarding the state's budget surplus and the upcoming special session 2 of the Virginia General Assembly scheduled for August 2nd, 2021. The upcoming special session 2 is where our state legislators will decide how to allocate the $4.3 billion it has received from the federal government in ARPA funds. Much of the state and separate federal funding, infrastructure bill, et cetera, will be allocated towards similar programs that the city may be considering funding. Therefore, there is a lot of money being infused into the economy from the federal and state governments. Fortunately, we can be strategic about how we allocate these funds. We have until 2026 to obligate these funds, which is a longer timeline when compared to the CARES Act dollars. As a result of all the funding, Virginia's Deputy Secretary of Finance has advised local governments not to rush into allocating these one-time funds. Given the city's competing priorities, we want to ensure that we're considering all sources of funds to enable us to operate responsibly and prudently in allocating our funds. When staff brings this back before the council, the purpose of the second presentation will be to share with council how the city proposes allocating and accounting for the direct funds that we are receiving. Ms. Harris Braxton, you may start your presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam City Manager, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for inviting Virginia First Cities to come. I am very appreciative of your membership. You have been longtime members. Our Councilwoman Lisa Lucas-Burke is our vice chair, and so we are so thrilled that she is on our executive committee and is making a real difference in the work that Virginia First Cities does, and we're happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So I'm going to be quick and go through what is Virginia First Cities, but I want to make sure that you know I'm doing it quickly, but I hope that you recognize that there is value, a great deal of value in your membership with Virginia First Cities. And as I was telling the city manager before we met, the bottom line is trying to bring the resources that you need to your cities, and that is what we focus on. We focus probably 95% of what we do ends up being finances, real dollars that come to your cities if you choose to take advantage of them. And so let me, without further delay, I've been the the executive director of Virginia First Cities for the last, several years. I've been there for a long time. And I was part of the effort when Virginia First Cities first started. I worked for the city of Richmond for 11 years before that. I've had a background in policy in the governor's office, and I'm assistant city attorney. I used to be assistant city attorney in Richmond. So I've done a lot of different things, and this is my favorite thing that I've done, and that is to work for our cities to address the problems that our cities face. And so without further ado, let me go forward. So who is Virginia First Cities? We are the statewide organization that advocates for policies and programming that have a disproportionately beneficial impact on cities. And so we analyze this information. We want to make sure that we're studied and researched as we move forward to bring the best effort in the best places that are going to help you. So we address policies that impact the cities in an equitable manner, like annexation policies and a number of others, but that's one that stands out easily. We are 16 of Virginia's historic cities in the Commonwealth, and you see the list there, and Portsmouth has been with us basically from the very beginning, and because you know how important it is to work together and to get results. And we focus on areas, anything that really affects your cities is what we're focusing on. Some of those big things, like urban economic development, K-12 education, challenge schools. We put a lot of focus on education. And even though you're not directly responsible for the budgets, you are, in the end, responsible for the budgets. And you have ways of working on education as well. Community wealth building has been a big piece for us in the last few years, and I know that Portsmouth is very interested in that whole effort. Transportation, public safety, and in the last year we've been a clearinghouse and advocate for federal COVID information and relief. So the ARPA, CARES, all of that, we've put a lot of attention there. We have cutting edge webinars and opportunities for city managers and our elected officials to participate, and we've created a City Managers Institute that all of our city managers are part of. So as far as our board is concerned, every city has a member of a city council as one of the board members. The other board member is the city manager, whoever that may be, and we're so glad to have Ms. Jones here participate. So VFC is proactive. We push for legislative and policy change because we know that members' local budgets are driven by demographics. And so we put a lot of focus on the bottom line. We strategically lobby in the issue areas where we know our members will benefit. So we focus on the state level. You know, we work with the administration, governor's administration, legislators across the state, and we try to create programming that's going to be beneficial to you. So we advocate for the implementation of new ideas and best practices, and we partner on areas of mutual concern. So we talk about how successful we have been. We have a list here on this page of some of the recent General Assembly accomplishments. Some of them we have taken the lead, some of them we've been partners on, but the first one in 2017, we started a $7.5 million per year grant program called the TANF for Employment Community Wealth Building Program. We've had 3 rounds of that. Portsmouth has taken part in that, and so far it has come to $42 million. And that's just that one program that Virginia First Cities alone pushed because it is what our members said. We try to respond to what you think is important, and we try to address it. Funding for the locality groupings for TANF payments, the extended day year school program, year-round schools, that did not exist until Virginia First Cities pushed for that. And so right now, if any school in your school system can ask for up to $400,000 a year to have an extended day or year-round program. It doesn't have to be day, it could be whatever you want it to be, really. It's very flexible, but that's a program that we know benefits challenged school systems, and that's one that is there for the taking. The at-risk add-on has been very important because we have lots of challenged schools. And so we've been the ones that pushed for that. And now we've got more partners that are working on it as well. But years back, no one was focused on that. And Virginia First Cities has been focused on it, and we continue to push with our partners to bring revenue. The Virginia Preschool Initiative, the Master Teacher Residency Program, the Housing Trust Fund, we pushed to bring additional resources there. The Enterprise Zone Program is another one that Virginia First Cities has kind of been in the spotlight, and we push to try to protect it, preserve it, and give you the resources that you need. And we've been working along with Portsmouth to try to bring industrial revitalization funding for your port-related issues that I know are so important to you. And I know Sherry Neal has been pivotal working with our legislators. I know Senator Lucas and others have been very important in making that happen. And we appreciate the partnership with Sherry Neal. The Main Street Program, Economic Development, the Brownfields Remediation Program didn't even exist until we pushed to create that program, the State Brownfields Program. And then funding for police departments to try to address the needs of your cities. So, as I mentioned, the Community Wealth Building Program, that did not exist until we asked that it be put in the budget, $42 million since 2017. There are 3 rounds, as I mentioned earlier, and a number of our cities have really taken that money to help get people trained into careers that they can be successful in. And so that's a big piece, and each of our cities has the ability to partner with whomever they choose and use this money to their best to bring people to working and having being able to take care of themselves in the best way possible. And so I'll just kind of move forward because I know I've got to hurry up. But COVID-19, we've been working, as I said earlier, on the pandemic issues, trying to keep you well informed. We send emails. Our newsletter comes to all of your members. Everybody on City Council should get that. So if you see something from Virginia First Cities, take a look. You'll probably find something that's interesting to you, and you'll learn something. We just had a recent webinar. We invited all City Council members to participate in that on ARPA, and we want to make sure that you're well informed and well educated on this issue because there's a lot to know. And we continue to advocate for CARES, we did for CARES for ARPA, and we want to make sure that our legislators know how you feel. That's important because there's $4.3 billion on the table. August 2nd, the special session will occur, and we want to make sure that we know what's important to you, and we will be pushing for what's important to you. So, we're interested in growing. We welcome your participation. If you have questions, I'm always available. We want you to participate in Virginia First Cities because this is your organization. This just kind of lists some of the things that we've done recently. And I think that's all that I have. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. And at this point, colleagues on council, do you have any questions? Councilman Battle, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, sir.
You gave the city Portsmouth $42 million, and you were saying that it was $7 million a year. What year was it?
I don't think, I'm unclear.
I thought that you said that
No.
there was $7 million that was.
No, I think I said, I'm sorry. What I said was that there was $42 million in the Community Wealth Building Fund that we advocated to have put in place. And I said that Portsmouth has been taking advantage of that TANF for employment grant, that you all have a program that is addressing community wealth building, getting people hired and trained and those sorts of things.
So were those funds given yearly?
Yes, for 5 years. If you, once you apply you apply with your program to the TANF for Employment Grant, you get funded for 5 years.
Are we receiving them now? Are we in one of those 5-year periods?
You are one of those periods. I'm not certain exactly where you all stand. This is not, my organization doesn't have it. We just had it created. We advocated for the creation of the program. Okay? Thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Is it Ms. Harris Braxton?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you for the
Kelly, yes, or Kelly.
Yeah, all right. The advocacy that you do as an organization, one of the critical issues I'm interested in finding out where this organization stands for poverty-stricken cities such as Portsmouth.
Yes, sir.
High levels of poverty. One of the major issues that has impacted this city has been the funding of education at the state level. Since 2008, the recession,
Yes.
the state's budget, as you know, has not included what are called non-SOQ positions, which poverty-stricken cities like Portsmouth that has multiple math levels and reading levels in one classroom is greatly impacted when you do not have those additional fundings for teacher assistants and even more teachers.
Yes.
And so where is this organization on advocating,
Yeah.
now that we have control of both the House and Senate on the Democratic side, where are we as far as advocating that those funds be restored back to cities such as Portsmouth,
Sure.
that we might can help to address the significant gaps in funding that since 2008, even though the state has had windfall profits, we have not seen those funds restored back
Yes.
to the city. So is that on this organization's agenda? Because that directly impacts our city and our
Absolutely.
children.
Absolutely, and Virginia First Cities has put a lot of focus into just those issues that you are addressing. We are definitely strongly supportive of fully funding the SOQ, which is what I think you're referring to. Some of those positions that should be fully funded aren't fully funded. We strongly support that. We work very closely with the Board of Ed to make sure that they know where our cities stand. We've pushed for a variety of other, sometimes when it's hard to get those things funded, like the SOQ, which has been very difficult, and we're still supporting that. We've pushed in other places, like the at-risk add-on. The at-risk add-on provides direct, flexible dollars for your school systems. And the at-risk add-on has increased from, what is it, Jim? Yeah, to, is it 30? I'm sorry. That's okay. So we're talking about the at-risk add-on and how much we push to make that, to improve that. But we are strongly supportive of fully funding of the SOQ.
Right, and actually, it's the non-SOQ. Those are the positions that have been cut.
The ones that were cut out. Yeah,
Right,
I know
right.
exactly.
I like to talk about that a little different because people get confused about what the SOQ
Yeah.
is. The SOQ is what the state will pay for.
Right.
It's their definition of what the standards of quality, which is the state's definition. This is the bucket
Yeah.
that we will pay the localities for based on your composite index. And so what we really need to do is expand the standards of quality
The
to include
non-SOQ.
more assistants, teachers' assistants, more assistant principals, lower class sizes, more reading. So it's the size. The SOQ is always funded by the General Assembly because they define the SOQ. That's, and so. So really, what we need to do and what we work for cities is, and the Board of Education has proposed an expansion of the SOQ, a large expansion to include many of the things you're talking about, and that's been put before the General Assembly. We've been pushing and working with the Board of Education to help create this expanded definition of the standards of quality, so it would include a lot more of the positions that are not currently covered. You do, as a local level, pay 100% for anyone who is not covered by that state definition, which is the standards of quality. That's what the state's definition is.
Right.
It's who they will cover. I'll give you an example. So there's 19,000 teacher aides employed in Virginia school divisions. They only cover 2,500 in the standards of quality, basically kindergarten and special ed. So we said, look, one of our priorities is like, you need to cover a lot more of these teacher aides in the SOQ. And so that's how it really works, is you know, we need to expand that SOQ.
Right. But thank you. I just wanted to make sure
Yes.
that
No,
since you were in Portsmouth, we want to make sure we put that issue before you and
It is-
appreciate your
That's-
advocacy.
That's
on
the
it.
biggest issue we deal with,
We
is
spent
doing
a
exactly
lot of
that.
time on that, yes.
For cities. We've gotten money for at-risk add-on. We've expanded that from 12% per free lunch student maximum. If you have the most concentrated numbers of free lunch, you used to get 12% boost of basic aid per kid. It's this year, fiscal 20, it's now 26%. And we've grown it by over $100 million. And First Cities was instrumental in doing that, and pushing for that. And that goes, we identified that because that gets the stressed cities the most money. So we can prioritize that, we can get you the most,
Yeah.
because you have the most free lunch kids.
Right.
And that's really the point. That's what Virginia First Cities focuses on. What's going to have a disproportionately beneficial impact on your cities, on our members.
I think it's a
Thank you.
great segue, Kelly, if you don't
Yeah,
mind, into this.
I'm happy
This
to.
discussion.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Ms. Harris Braxton. Thank you very much,
next
ma'am.
one, because it gets into, I wanted to start with the issue of the general fund, which of course is what the state uses to pay for K-12 education aid to localities, school divisions. And the reality is, you know, a lot of this money got cut, you know, the support costs, they reduced funding, and it hasn't really caught up until just about now on a nominal basis. In real terms, it still hasn't caught up what the state provides to school divisions, adjusted for inflation. And we've had a roller coaster ride in revenue, state revenues, and there's a lot of priorities the state has and how it funds. It's about 30% of the state's general fund goes to K-12. Okay, and so the reality is you got to have more money at the state level to expand the SOQ for them to restore those cuts that they did back in the financial crisis. And what we've got right now coming up is we've got a $2 billion plus surplus that is going to you're going to hear about in the next few weeks, you know, from fiscal 21. We didn't have the impact of the pandemic, and nobody thought. They thought they're going to have to cut the state budget by $2.8 billion this biennium. The reality is they're going to have more money than they thought they were going to 2 years ago when they first did this. Not less, more. And so the opportunity is ripe to do exactly what you're saying. We've restored a lot of the cuts that they did because they thought they weren't going to have enough money. They started restoring them last session, you know, and they're going to come in this special session to deal with ARPA. But the next session, they're going to be dealing with this surplus. Now, a lot of it going to have to automatically go to the rainy day fund, because that's what the Constitution says. It says it has to go to water quality. So if you got a $2 billion revenue surplus, half of it's going to go to the rainy day fund and water quality improvement fund. Okay, but they're going to have a $1 billion surplus to spend, and that's going to raise the FY22 budget because the base is way higher. And so all this federal money flowing through, jobs are coming back, people are getting higher wages. I expect the growth to be at least what they expected, but a higher base. And so they're going to have another big amount of money that they're going to be able to program in come the regular session. So this time is ripe to get them to adopt things like expanding the SOQ, covering, restoring funding cuts to K-12. And we're going to be right in the mix of that. A lot of other people will be too. And so that's my short, I know you don't have a lot of time, about the general fund. There's going to be a lot of money that's going to be here, and the General Assembly and Governor are going to be dealing with how to spend it, okay, coming up. That's irrespective of this federal money that we're going to talk about next, okay? That's the state's general fund. We got a lot of money flowing into the state right now. I've never seen it. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've never seen anything like this, okay, in 35 years, okay? I worked for the Senate Finance Committee for 12 years. I was on their staff. I was their economist. From 87 to 99, I started this business, Fiscal Analytics, in 1999, so I've been doing this for 22 years almost. You know, understanding the state's budget, their revenues, et cetera, and I work with First Cities closely and try to advise them as well. So here's, through May, I could probably, that's 17% growth rate, actual year to date for the general fund. They were expecting, in the adopted revenue forecast in March, 3%. Now, it's not going to turn out to be 17. It's going to go down some in June because of the timing of things, the way the tax returns were filed last year versus this year. But don't be, that $2 billion, it's going to be at least $2 billion, the surplus for fiscal 21, the general fund. Now we're going to switch to the federal money. This was the $1.9 billion and how it came in. So the biggest ones were the $1,400 extra payment to individuals, the expanded unemployment insurance. There was all sorts of money for various things like public transit, airports, financial services. But the fourth one's the state government aid, and that's Virginia's $4.3 billion. The uses of that are the same as two more over, the local government aid. That's $2.9 billion coming to Virginia. So Virginia's got 4.3 coming directly to the state for them to allocate for these uses I'm going to talk about. And then the 2.9 billion coming to you, you're getting 56.8 billion of that local aid. That's totally separate than the 4.3 state. So there's going to be the General Assembly's August 2nd special session. They're going to talk about, and the General Assembly said, we're going to if we get more aid, we want to say how to spend it. That's what they said last session, because the CARES Act come and the governor had said, he started talking about how we're going to spend. They wanted to be included, and they wanted to have the final say in any new federal money, and all of a sudden we got 1.9, this trillion package, and 4.3 is coming to Virginia, to the state. That's what they're going to allocate in August 2nd, that state. You've already gotten half of your money, your 56. You're going to get it in two tranches, one now, you just got it, and then another a year from now, and you got to allocate it or put it in a contract by the end of December 2024, and then you put it under contract, and you got 2 more years after that to actually spend it. So you got a long time to figure out what you want to do with that 56.8 million. Okay? Then you're getting another tranche going directly to your schools, and I'm going to show you that too. So they're going to get aid. Your school division is going to get aid, and they're going to get tens of millions of dollars, and I've got it on a slide here. So here's the various funds coming directly to Virginia at 1.9 trillion. Okay, not counting the aid to individuals, and the unemployment insurance and all that. Through 13.8 billion. That's why I'm saying the general fund, because the state's going to have all this stimulus money coming into it still, and there's also easy money from the Federal Reserve. We're going to do well next year too, this coming year, and the general fund's going to, and that's why we want to talk about restoring public ed funding to where it should be and expanding the SOQ to what you guys are already doing. So you're in that second tranche, that 56.8 at 2.9 billion. The state's going to be dealing with the 4.3 at the top line in August 2nd. All right? There you are down there, because these are the first cities, the 16 first cities. You can see yourself in the middle. Sorry, I should have highlighted you coming here, but there you are. You're going to get 56.8. You're getting $600 per person through that 2.9 billion coming to Virginia. You're getting about 2% of the local government aid. You've got a little over 1% of the population. You're doing better than the state average, okay? Quite a bit better in how much money you're getting. So what can you use this money on? The law had 4 uses. That's literally the language in the law, the American Rescue Plan, right there, about how you can use the money. And then what happened was the U.S. Treasury put all these guidelines around that and said, we're going to give you all sorts of guidance on how to spend it, what fits into that. But that's actually the law right there. Respond to the public health emergency. And that includes help to small business, help to individuals, help to the tourism industry, travel. Anyone that needs aid, non-profits, you can give them money. So it's a pretty broad category in A. And there's a lot of guidance that the U.S. Treasury gave you about that. The second category is you can provide premium pay to people who are on the front lines of responding to COVID. And that's a pretty wide definition too. And I'm going to give you some examples a little bit later. And then the most flexible of all is the third one. If you haven't grown at a rate of at least 4.1% your revenues over this period from the end of fiscal 19 to the end of 2024, 4.1, there's 4 points in time you calculate, you can use your tranche of money, that 56.8 million, pretty much any way you would budget your money. It's just like a lost revenue to you, they're assuming, and you can use it any way you want, including infrastructure, including anything that you spend your local money on. And I happen to know that your local revenues, according to the Comptroller's report that just came out for fiscal 20, from 19 to 20, you grew 1.4%. You didn't grow 4.1, you grew 1.4. Now your first calculation will actually be the end of 20. So you got another half year you got to add for that first calculation. So you have, the first calculation is 18 months, not 1 year. So it's really 6.2 or something over 18 months. Well, let's say 4.1 holds. That would allow you to spend $6 million of that 56.8 any way you want, okay? But if you had another low below 4.1 the next year, you could spend that amount. So there's some localities telling me they can spend all of their money because they actually lost money during the, compared to 4.1. They can spend all their allocation any way they want because they're well below 4.1%. Okay? So the fourth one is the only one explicitly saying you can spend it on infrastructure. This was not an infrastructure bill. It was not designed for that. It was designed to respond to the pandemic directly. But they said you can make direct infrastructure investments in water, sewer, or broadband. And as an example, if you need resiliency, if you've got to fight the rising water coming from the ocean, you can spend your money on that. You can spend it on your sewer system, your water line, fighting resilience. You can spend it on broadband or cybersecurity to protect your broadband. So that's a pretty broad category too when you're thinking about how to spend it. Now remember, all these things right here is exactly what the state can spend their money on too. There's no difference effectively. The state's 4.3 goes into the same categories. That's the same exact language. You can't put it in pensions. The state can't cut its taxes, although that's being argued now. Okay, that portion. There's an argument, a legal argument about that. But essentially, it's the same. The local and state uses are exactly the same. Okay, so you may want to leverage what the state's going to do on August 2nd. You may want to. They may allow you to apply for their money. We got to see what's going to happen August 2nd with the states. We know, for example, yesterday the governor and the leaders of the General Assembly announced they want to spend $353 million on the Rebuild Virginia Small Business Help Program, the tourism industry, $50 million, and $53 for the Industrial Revitalization Fund, of which you get a portion through that port. They've expanded that greatly, and the Main Street program, which VFC has been working on to allow the bigger cities and their corridors to use that. Okay, so that's $53 million. So we know they want to do that. We also know they want to do broadband. We know they want to pump money into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to get it back so they don't have to raise taxes on businesses to fill it. We already know that. But they want to do things for you people having hard times with utilities, public health. But we'll see the exact details August 2nd. But you kind of get a sense of what the state's going to want to do. Okay. So reporting requirements, yeah, you got to report things. I'm not going to go through that now. You got a great city manager. She'll know how to handle that. These documents, if you want to learn more, there's a great questionnaire by U.S. Treasury. These are all kind of the U.S. Treasury, the official guidance on how you spend this. I've listed those there. A budget process, again, you guys can handle that. How you develop this, how you spend this. But I put a slide in there to help others. And then, identify those groups that were hardest hit. How can you become more economic and healthy resistance, leverage state money, try to get some of all those pots. So there's more than just the state and local pots. There's public transit pot. There's pots for helping people with rental problems. I mean, there's all sorts of pots of money, not just those two pots that I'm talking about, okay? 13.8 billion, okay, of money coming to Virginia through various pots of money. So I talked a lot about the state and local, the actual replacing lost revenue. I'm not going to talk about that more. The 4.1 is the minimum. If you actually grew faster than that, the prior 3 years, you can actually compare your revenue growth now to even greater amounts. It's the greater of the two, either what you actually were growing at or 4.1. Okay, so it's the greater of the two. And then you start talking about that number A. If you want to fit yourself into that, better public health, ventilation improvements, purchasing of equipment, improving the efficiency of your government to respond to public health emergencies. All that's allowed. You can read this. Here's the premium pay. If you want to give a pay boost, you can use your money, and there's the examples of types of people that you can give boosts of pay to. And there's more. This is non-exclusive. There's probably others you can think of, okay? You can actually hire law enforcement personnel. You can pay them more. You can actually literally hire policemen with that money now. That was put in the guidance. So it's not just paying them more, you can hire them, those particular. And then, direct assistance to households. You can think of lots of ways. Lots of people that were hammered by the pandemic, you could give them direct assistance. You can give it to nonprofits who can give it to them. Okay, so you can think of lots of ways. Job training, help with transportation, anything that responds to the effects of the pandemic will be allowed. And you can think of the same things for business assistance, helping your restaurants, helping your entertainment venues. Norfolk told us the other day they want to renovate and put back in play Chrysler Hall as one of their big elements of using their money. They want to be very transformative, doing a couple things. They want the state to help out with their 4.3 on the broadband, on the public health. They want, things that everyone has a problem with. They want the state to do that. And they want to use theirs, they told us, for these big transformative projects. But Danville had a whole laundry list of things they told us about they want to do. So there's differences amongst localities how they're going to do this, okay? You can think of almost every which way but Sunday that they're thinking about what to do with their money. So that's going to be up to you guys, how you figure this out. And then disproportionately impacted communities. If you're a census, what the guidance says, if you're a census district that has at least 70% of your households 80% or below the state's median income, almost anything you do is going to be considered okay. Let's say you got a park there in that census district, and you want to improve that park. It's going to be assumed that's for the health of those residents, and it's going to be okay. Okay? So that's another thing it says in the guidance. If you've got a poverty district, pretty much anything is going to be okay. All right? That's within reason. And then upgrading schools, improving water. We talked about you can use any of this for school, upgrading the broadband and the health of your schools, improving ventilation. You cannot really build new schools with this, except for that revenue loss money. You can do that. You can start building a new school and then use additional revenues or float debt later because you can do anything with that revenue loss money. Now here's as I was telling you, I promised you I'd show you how much was going to be received through that third pot of direct money to localities, and that's the school aid money. And Portsmouth's going to get 46.7 cents directly to your school system, and that's a little broader. They can use that money for anything that's federal money is already spent on. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that and let you guys go. But you can look at that, and so that's another big pot. Portsmouth's getting some money.
Jim, you said 47.6 cents?
So 46.7 million is going
Okay,
to the
million.
Portsmouth school system.
Million cents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I whipped through that. I hope it was clear, and to give you a sense that you've got some serious dollars coming your way, and you've got some flexibility in how to use it. Okay. Happy to
Council
answer
colleagues, do we have any questions? Councilwoman Lucas-Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Just a comment, Mr. Regenball, and thank you and Ms. Braxton Harris for coming out. I know that you're offering this to the 16 localities, the city councils, and it's very good information for us to have for our citizens because we're getting calls from people with their laundry list of things that they want. So this presentation is helpful and for us to have it on our government channel, airing for people to go back and to look at some of the, the good things that we're going to have and, how we can do them with the schools. And it has always been a concern with us with the SOQ because our cafeteria custodians and bus drivers, we'll be having to fill in the gaps and pay those. So this is good information. It's a lot of money. We want to make sure that we do the right thing. And one of the questions that I asked when you had the webinar was the reporting, and I'm glad to see that there's, guidelines on how it reports. I think they mentioned that we could form a team of people, that would do that report that would fall under the city manager. And of course, Sherry Neal has been helpful. One other thing that we did with Kelly was the survey that the localities did, and we kind of had to gauge which kind of things we wanted to work on as a Virginia First Cities coming up. And, I guess that was just for our internal information, but some of the things that we're going to look at, you've already talked about. But number one priority, a lot of the concerns were the same for the survey.
Absolutely. Yes, and So we like to find out what's important to you.
Right.
And so we did a survey. We're working with our board. We're working with the city managers to try to get feedback so that we know how to best talk to the legislators and the governor as we move to August 2nd. It's been interesting to get some feedback to hear what is important, and we'll be sharing that with you the next few days.
Great. Thank you. I
Okay.
enjoy working with you all, too, on the board, so.
We
Thank
appreciate
you for
your-
coming to Portsmouth today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hold on, Councilmember Moody. Councilmember Moody, you go ahead, and then you, Dr. Whitaker, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. This is definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Thank you for the presentation. Since so much of this money is going to be at our discretion on how it's spent, Mayor, I think it would be germane that we reach out to our stakeholders in the city, as well as schedule at the right opportunity to schedule some public sessions, hearings to hear from the public. There are a lot of needs out there, rent, water, utilities, the basics that people are still struggling with. So I think it'd be germane to us to let's hear from the public, let's hear from the stakeholders, and make sure we spend this once-in-a-lifetime dollars very wisely.
Thank you, Councilmember Moody, and I would just like to add to that before I turn the mic over to Dr. Whitaker. One of the things that the manager, and I know the manager will speak to her process, but one of the things that I had read in looking at some of the ways localities approach this was to put a committee of citizens together, as well as city leaders together, to kind of look at those needs. That way you would have buy-in from everyone, and then you could then roll it out and make it available to the entire community. But certainly include those stakeholders in the discussion and in the process. I think that's a very prudent way to approach it. Dr. Whitaker, sir.
Yes, I want to thank our city manager for this first team and bringing this to us, and I would hope and expect that we will get report back from the city manager on the process, and then it would be rolled out after hearing from the city manager. Also, I would like to make sure I was clear that I understood you correctly on the funds. They must be contracted by 2024 and spent by 2026.
Correct, sir.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
December.
December.
December 31st, 2024 contract. You have 2 more years after their contract get actually spent.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. And Madam City Manager, you want to speak to Councilmember Moody's question?
Actually, I'm speaking to both.
Both, yes.
Because the next session that we're going to bring before the council will address the process, as well as how we're going, the categories, and give you a preliminary view of what those categories are. So you'll get that process, and we'll be open to whatever suggestions at that time that the council wants us to go. But we'll have a process.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Well, on behalf of the council, I want to thank you all. This was very informative, very timely, and one thing I do know is we're fortunate to have organizations like you representing us, and we're fortunate to have our very own Councilwoman Lisa Lucas Burke in the leadership role there, so that we are most represented. So once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and members. And thank you, Madam City Manager. And this is our first in-person. You all are special. The very first. Nice to see you.
Rank has its privileges, right?
That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have now come to the point in our work session where city council liaison reports. Councilmember Battle, do you have anything to report, sir?
Please turn your mic on.
I attended the Parks and Recreation meeting, and in the meeting, we went over that we, in the near future, will be doing the scooter trial, and at the next meeting, we'll get that date. Of course, you know, we have the Thursday, sundown Thursday thing. I think it was postponed last week, but it will be in operation this week if the weather is normal and everything goes well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moody? Sir. Councilwoman Lucas-Burke.
I have no reports. The next meeting of the Hampton Roads Regional Jail Authority hasn't been announced, Lavores. Have you heard anything? Haven't heard anything. But the meeting is scheduled for Thursday, tomorrow.
I'll yield to the city manager to answer that question relative to
We haven't.
Actually, I'm still waiting to get specifics about that
Right.
information, and as soon as I get it, I'll let
Okay,
you know.
we know. The meetings are right now because Hampton is the host city. The meetings are being held over at the Hampton Coliseum. So I'll give more information once we have it.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Whitaker?
No.
Councilman Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give an update, what we was talking about in our planning commission. Me and Lisa, Councilwoman Lisa Lucas-Burke is the liaison of this particular board. We have a lot of projects that's coming in to our city. If you guys are familiar with the some of the apartments that's located on our Deep Creek and Victory section of the city, Bird Lane, we're actually having a new development that'll be, that'll be coming to our table, and I think it's something that we need to help update that area, that part of the city, because it's growing, and a lot of our citizens are excited. We had a couple people from our city attend, and they were concerned about some of the relocation process of the new development that'll be there and relocating the citizens. And it seemed like it's something that, they have in order, and it'll be exciting to see what they put in our city. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. And we do have a need for a closed session this evening. And Dr. Whitaker, are you prepared to read the motion?
I don't have the motion. Oh, here we go.
I've got it.
I have it.
You got it?
I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A.7 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation and open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the city, specifically regarding Lucas versus Green et al., Portsmouth Circuit Court Case Number CL 210022905-00, and the interim city attorney's general report of the activities of his office.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Second. Madam Deputy Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Vice Mayor Barnes, Mr. Battle,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke.
Abstain due to the obvious reason.
Okay, Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. We're moving to closed session. Would you please read the motion? Turn on it.
I hereby move that each council member certify that to the best of his or her knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Vice Mayor Barnes, he's not here. Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke is
Abstain.
abstain. Okay. Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. We are adjourned into our 7 o'clock meeting.